There's a new case going on right now about Patrick and Lindsay Clancy and what it says about society in general. And honestly, what's funny is I really don't think I would have dived into this, but it's been taking the internet by storm. And this is going to be a completely different episode than what I did intend on making. But I want to talk about Candace at the end too, about the debate that are going to be happening tomorrow. But first off, I wanted to get into, it's weird on what the conservatives are taking away from this, not exactly what everyone else is taking from it. Let's kind of dive in and see what's going on. And I kind of want to make a point that I think is very, very important in all of this. And that is, oh wait, I can't tell you because then you won't stick around. Just kidding. Let's go ahead and get into it. This is The Tradesman with Caleb Smith. So first off, if you haven't heard anything about it, Patrick and Lindsay Clancy are in the news because one or the other of them killed their 3 children. A lot of it is the assumption that she did it, and there's a lot of stuff going on the internet right now about the trial that she's engaged in for her life, so to speak, after almost losing her life to either a suicide attempt or a murder attempt, depending on who you listen to. And there's been a lot of things that have come out, and it makes you wonder, and I think the reason why it makes just everyone wonder is because of how evidence and that kind of thing is handled nowadays. I'm going to go through some things that people find weird, and you can kind of dive into it yourself if you want to. And I've kind of weeded some of this stuff out because I looked at it on through searches and so on and tried to identify what actually is true and what actually is not, and what is just assumption or questions or whatever else, and try to break it down. But what exactly is being said about Patrick? Now, here's the thing that you need to understand right now. There's a whole cadre of people online that are defending Patrick, saying there's no way it's possible for him to have done this. And then there's a bunch of people online saying she may have been mentally ready to do these things, but she didn't actually do it, and it was her husband because he's a psychopath, right? So there's a lot of things that are inconsistent, at least. And I'm kind of on the fence on what exactly is happening here, but there's a thought that I wanted to dive into. Now, the first thing is that there's a lot of neglect demonstrated by Patrick, at least neglect. There is a video that came out during the trial, and it's actually very damning of him, showing that when they're out and about, he has zero concern for the children or his wife, and she is overwhelmed, left to handle everything on her own. And you could say, well, that's just him being a bad husband and father. Cool, yes, absolutely. I'm not arguing that a debate at all. But that's just to start it off with. And then things started getting even crazier. And some of this is debatable, and it's kind of like I wrote at the bottom of my notes here. I wrote on the bottom, I said, it's the battle of experts at this point, because the experts are debating on what exactly is the truth. And you have to ask yourself, and here's kind of the thought. We have to ask ourselves, what do we trust as, quote, evidence, and what do we not? Because here's the problem. A lot of evidence depends on who's looking for what and what they're looking for and why they're looking for it. So some things are, there was pills, there was medicine in a water cup, and there's some assumption that he was messing with her pills and potentially changing her dosages and dosing her through a water or a drink, something like that. But then he comes out and says, well, no, this is how she usually took medicine. She didn't like taking pills. Now, she was a nurse. So who knows? I don't think she would have a problem with it, but maybe she did. And this is normal. But that's his evidence. That's his statement. So there's that. Then there's inconsistencies with what he's telling the police officers and what's actually happening, about how he had to have a conversation with his wife about getting the generic brand of medicine for his children, and then comes home with a name brand. Now, whether or not that was intentional or not, he made the whole thing about how the fact that he was talking to her about getting the generic brand, and that's what he wanted to get, and how they got the generic brand. He even stated that they got, as far as I know, the generic brand. And then what is found is the not generic brand, the actual brand. So there's okay, so you're like, okay, that's simple, that's small, right? Well, then it gets crazy. There's searches on how to kill yourself properly. And if you do the timelines, and timelines is big in this one, if you're anything interested in the timelines are saying that what people are trying to say online is that the timeline proves that she was not even there for this search, and that it was done on a device at the home at the time. So it could not have been her. And she's also, being a nurse like she was, she would know how to kill herself. She wouldn't need help to do so. Okay. Or looking up how to do that. Another thing is that they talk about how the cuts that were done first were sloppy and were not done as of someone who knew what they were doing and was used to dealing with medical things. Another thing is that her injuries, especially the one across her neck, shows evidence of a left-handed person, but she's right-handed. The husband's left-handed, as if he did it for her, meaning or did it to her. There's also a lot of timelines that people are presenting of showing that consistently when she needed him, he was going out with his friends and so on to go out to these trips and so on. And some people are trying to argue this timeline, so it's kind of hard to tell exactly, but there shows being a consistency of his lack of concern. She was on something like 13 meds over a very short time as they're trying to nail down this meds. And now if you know anything about these kind of medications, this stuff takes time. The fact that the doctors were so negligent in changing this is insane. He got with a new woman openly and visibly within 4 months of the incident. So the incident is his wife, if you follow what he's saying, his wife slits her throat and her wrists and jumps out a window after having strangled their 3 children. And within 4 months, he's with another woman and marries her very, very quickly thereafter. They already have a 1-year-old. And this is the story that happened in 2023? There's reports, and it's proven that his father offered to help because she was going through severe postpartum and had postpartum major problems. That's the whole kind of timeline of this whole story. And his father, Christopher, offered to help, and Patrick, was the one to turn them down and say, no, we don't need help. There's an issue with a crushed thyroid, and this is something I actually looked into. Crushed thyroid not being consistent with her fall. What's crazy is they say, well, then she must have hit something in her throat on the way down. Now, crushed thyroid, it has been proven, and even Google searches confirms, even though for some reason AI is really in defense of the Patrick guy, which is kind of odd, that it is consistent with strangulation or her hitting something on the way down, like a windowsill or something. But then all the evidence otherwise shows that she hit back first on the ground, meaning so not a crushed thyroid. And by crushed thyroid, they don't mean like the actual organ. They mean the cartilage around it. So not consistent with that. And then there's a whole argument over body temp. And there's some experts coming out and saying that the body temp thing is misleading because she was losing blood and it's the type of spinal injury that she had. And so it's consistent. It's okay. It's fine for her to have that kind of body temp. But then there's other people that are coming out that are like ER doctors and nurses and saying, no, absolutely not. If she had that body temp when he got to her, she would not have been having words out of her mouth, let alone a full-on conversation, which apparently is what he's claiming with regards to the children, where she claims that supposedly tells him that she did it, which is very, very convenient at best. The body temp timing doesn't work, depending on who you talk to. It can work or it doesn't work. There's a lot of things that are involved there. What else did I cover everything? And there's a lot more than that. I was just trying to cover the stuff that I could prove, or not prove, but like confirm that would be legitimate based off of what they're saying. Now, here's the problem. The conservatives that I were hearing were saying, well, this is the problem with society, that people are on too much meds and blah, 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 blah. The problem is that there's a lot of people who just don't think that these things are necessary. Now, I know someone, and I can't say who or how or why I know this because it's a private story with regards to this person, not family, but this individual had a severe issue, and they ended up having to spend 2 weeks in a mental institution with meds to overcome a serious problem they had. Now, once they had overcome that severe moment, they were able to, through help and other things, to wean themselves off of that and do considerably better. But this idea that sometimes gets put out there in conservatives that, society is just horrible and it's falling apart and that everyone is on these meds. And that's why it's like, some people actually need these things. Okay. Just discounting it for the sake of discounting is not the truth. And something that I wanted, and I said all of this to say one thing. If there's nothing else that's true and consistent out of this, it's that the only truth is that Patrick Clancy, regardless of what you can say about anything else, is an absolute horrible husband who at best is extremely negligent, and at worst, if you follow some of the stories, allegedly murdered these 3 children and his wife, or attempted to kill his wife. And then the weirder thing is that he married someone almost literally exactly like her. It doesn't bode well for our society that everything that's negative about him is stuff that you can see around you. And look around when you're out and about. We don't have a good society of men. And I'm happy to say that I think a lot of the people that I'm seeing around me in the trades are trying to do better. Be better as fathers, be better as husbands, and be good. And even though this is sensationalized, it draws us in to remind us that if he was a good man, if he was the right kind of man, if he was there for his wife, trying to help her through her postpartum, trying to help her through all of these things, and people are trying to say, well, he was doing... No, pretty consistently you can say, even if all the other evidence is that he let her do it, it's almost like he was okay and was fine with her killing herself. Like, I don't know that he thought of or tried to let her do it to the children or not. I don't know. But after knowing that she said that she had those thoughts and asking to be locked up and other stuff to be protected, or have the kids locked up from her so she couldn't hurt them, for him to have left her so often by herself on purpose, almost, I mean, I guess is how I view it. It's not a good husband. It's not a good man. And we as a society need to do better with helping women through this, because this is becoming more and more of an issue. We need to be better because there's a lot of women out there that don't feel comfortable with telling people of their mental health problems. And the Bible talks about the fact that they're the weaker vessel, and we're there to help them and should be there to help them and support them get through that kind of thing. And I've seen it happen, and I have a personal case in my life of a good friend of ours, a good friend of the family's. A lot of things went wrong, but she ended up taking her life and trying to take one of her children with her. And there was a lot of decisions that were made along the way that I don't believe were the correct ones. And if we get better at recognizing that this stuff is serious and it's real, and that these people need help, and how we help them is forgetting everything else, ignoring the world to focus on your family as the most important thing that you have in your life, that would change it dramatically for them. And letting these women know, and if you're a woman that's watching this, I want you to know that you should be able to tell the people around you that love you these kinds of things and get the help that you need. Consistent, constant, careful help that is needed. And I know this is totally different than the topics I usually cover, but I thought that was necessary to say. This is not an example of a good guy. This is an example of a bad guy at best, at least, and a horrible person at worst. And that's just from the evidence that we can see, from the video footage that we literally have. Let's not be like that. Now, in a different note, I was going to mention this, and I want to do it as an aside on my way out. And again, this is a totally different thing than I usually do, and I think it's weird, but I thought it was necessary to say. There is a debate going on tomorrow, and this is going to have all the headlines for tomorrow. The Candace Owens is going to be debating Andrew Wilson over the whole Charlie Kirk death thing. And I would love to say that I hope it ends here, and that whoever wins and walks away and whatever. But I don't think it will. And Patrick Bet David is going to be the one person that's going to be moderating it. But the saddest part is we are in a world and time where no one trusts anyone in authority and in position. Because just like in this, there's lots of leads in this story that I was talking about that are not being pursued. Now, maybe there's a great reason for it, but they're not even good at communicating that kind of thing. And it doesn't give us a lot of hope and trust and faith in our systems, unfortunately. And this whole thing with Candace is exactly along the same line. Exactly along the same line. Because she plays carefully into all of those things that run us in our disbeliefs, especially after COVID. Especially after all the stuff that came out from Fauci unmasked the way he was. This is why it's so desperately important. So desperately important. I don't know if I put it up there. No, I didn't put it up there. But it's desperately important for us to have a basis off of which we can believe and trust and faith in everything, and give us a foundation that does not change. And that foundation is the Bible. Get yourself a Bible, start reading it, and set your foundation in Jesus. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help. And again, I know this is an odd, different take than I usually go into, but I think it's so important for us to make sure that through all the things that are happening, all the difference and weird things that are changing and happening different, and where we don't trust anything anymore, that we have one foundation. And that foundation has to be Jesus Christ. Thank you so much. Please do like, comment, and subscribe. And I'm back up to 135. So I went down to 134, back up to 135. It's kind of weird. I mean, I want to get past that. So like getting to like 200, 300s. Come on, let's go. Come on, let's go. Thank you.